Good afternoon, everybody in the world. I am super glad to be here today. My name is Ian Trevethan. I am the Education and Outreach Director here at the Sternberg Museum of Natural History, alongside our Museum Director, Dr. Reese Derrick.
That's me.
That's him. And how are you doing today, Reese?
Oh, it's a beautiful rainy day.
So it is. So it is.
It's cool. It's not too hot.
The museum is busy.
Although
The
there's
museum is busy.
the thing is there's not. It's nice and cool outside, but inside things have been warming up because there's been some issues that have been popping up that I understand, can raise paleontologists' temperatures a little bit.
It would be an interesting study in internal temperature variation.
Exactly.
So yes, there is something happening. There is something afoot in the world of popular paleontology. Let's put it that way. Our friend, the Discovery Channel, and I will preface by saying I'm not setting out to bash the Discovery Channel. They're in the business of television, of ratings, fine, whatever. But they are, I believe, this evening or this afternoon, sometime today, premiering a show called Dino Hunters, which
sounds like it would be a really great show.
it sounds really cool. In fact, friends and relatives of mine who are not professional paleontologists, who have not been schooled in paleontology, are really excited about it. And they keep saying, hey, wow, this looks really cool. And for a good while, I tried my best to not step on those bits of excitement. You want people to be excited
People
about
need to be
paleontology.
excited about paleontology.
Until I started seeing footage of what this television show is about.
So when it's talking about dinosaurs, it's not following Jack Horner someplace, it's not following
No.
Phil Curry or
No.
somebody out into the field to
I
do some
don't.
excavations.
Yeah, I don't imagine any one of those people that we know, that we have worked with, that are our colleagues, would willingly or wittingly be on this television show. In fact, there are several commercial collectors that I know that probably wouldn't touch this show with a 10-foot rake.
Well, that sounds a little scary. It doesn't sound so exciting anymore. So what's the deal? What's going on?
From what I've seen, and I will say that I have not watched a full episode of this television show. I have seen several previews that were sent to me by my beloved wife so she could see me react. I've seen several sections of episodes and introductions to the people who are the fossil finders in this case. And the premise that they've set up in this television show is these men appear to be, I think it's 3 different guys in Wyoming, South Dakota, and Montana. And
It is a good place for dino hunting.
it is a good place for dino hunting. And the thing is in these 3 states, there's lots of federal land. So if you are a federal repository, a museum that basically is the place that all fossils off of public land goes to, it's a little bit easier to acquire fossils. Now, the way this television show is set up is that there are these 3 guys that I think are ranch owners. So they are working off of private property. They are working off of what very well could be their own land. And the way they've set this up is these are fossil hunters looking for treasure of sorts. Now, we all know that ranches and farms in the western United States and the high plains and in this area, this region, some are struggling. And while I am not here to in any way, shape, or form condemn or bash these struggling farms and family ranches,
Because, you and I try to support them by buying a lot of beef.
absolutely. And whenever I've been out in the field in Montana or Wyoming or anywhere, they were always great to me. I learned a lot about hard work, especially.
I met a couple of very cool ranchers
Yeah.
in North Dakota that had bison and everything there.
And often we work very well with these people that own land, and very often it's through goodwill of these landowners that allow us to have fossils. But in this case, in these 3 different locations in 3 different states, this is all on private land. So technically, what they're doing is totally legal.
That's the thing. It's in the United States, unlike Canada and other countries. If you own the land, you own any fossils that are found in the land.
How is that different in Canada?
In Canada, anything that you find must go to the provincial government. It must go to the
Commonwealth. So that's been a sticky point for years, ever since I've been involved in professional paleontology. We've always struggled with how do we assign value to fossils, and really, can you assign value to fossils? In my opinion, there is a very nice fossil behind us. This fossil is beyond any sort of tangible value. This is beyond money. The value that this represents is beyond. This not only is older than we are, older than our own systems are. This animal is part of our history.
And it's the thing about especially vertebrate fossils, which is the thing that's really the trickiest in the paleontological world, is that very rarely do you find a vertebrate fossil that has all the bones there, because they get beat up, drifted apart, smashed, broken.
It's a geological
so
blunder.
When you're trying to reconstruct the history of the Earth and the history of life, what we have to work with are rocks and fossils. And in order to work with fossils, a lot of times they're partial. And so we're reconstructing our own history based on fragments of life. And so when you get the rare opportunity to get nearly complete fossils, which is really rare, they become completely invaluable as far as the science and
the stories,
the story of understanding our life and our planet. So the idea that these don't end up someplace where paleontologists can research them and piece them together in our whole history of life is really disconcerting to think that they might not make it to where we can understand, because there could be vast chapters missing if the fossils are missing.
So my problem, and let me clarify, when I say a nearly complete skeleton or a nearly complete fossil or a nearly complete skull tells a story, I don't necessarily mean that we as paleontologists go, we're going to write the story of Niobrarasaurus once upon a time. No, it doesn't work that way. The stories that we tell are derived from research. And the key to research is it must be peer-reviewed, which means if I do a bit of work, Dr. Barrick is going to want to double-check that work and make sure I'm up on the level. In order to do that, that work needs to be repeatable. So he needs to be able to go back and look at the same things that I did research on and double-check my work. And that's how we build on our knowledge. So back to my problem with the premise of the Dino Hunters is, there's the dinosaur cowboy out there. He's a sharp-dressed, sort of Roy Rogers-esque looking cowboy out there. And then there are a couple of other ranch owners. And, the story they're pitching is ranchers out here are struggling. And that they are. And I don't know what the answer to that is. That's beyond the scope here. But in this TV show, these 3 ranchers realize that if you find a good dinosaur skeleton or a complete dinosaur skull, you can sell it for millions of dollars and that'll save your ranch. And while that is
Potentially
true, and while it is legal, is it ethical? And this is where I guess we as professional paleontologists have to draw a line. because what I've seen so far, and again, I will admit that I have not seen a whole episode. I don't know that I would be able to sit through a whole episode. I think my wife is actually planning a party where, everybody gets to tune in and watch me react. So probably not safe for work or safe for the children, if I'm in that room. But the problem I have is at one point in some of the footage, the dinosaur cowboy guy straight out says, well, I don't do any of that science stuff. I'm just a cowboy who likes to find dinosaurs. Well, the problem is, A, if you don't do the science stuff while the bones are in the ground, a huge amount of information is lost right there. These guys are digging up skeletons with backhoes. Not what you do. There are times where you can remove overburden in that way, but you do not.
I've done that before, actually, as a matter of fact.
You do not dig up dinosaur fossils with a backhoe. And that's what it looked like they were doing to me. I could have misinterpreted it, but the message I'm getting is that these men are searching for the golden dinosaur, the golden T-Rex specifically. And I do believe it was the dancing cowboy or singing cowboy or whatever he was, dinosaur cowboy, that says he thinks he found a nano Tyrannosaurus. And of course my reaction is,
there is no nano Tyrannosaurus.
You found a juvenile Tyrannosaur. None of this nano Tyrannus, okay? So we run into some ethical stuff, because if they are finding a juvenile T-Rex, and if this skeleton is in fact complete, that would be some very, very, very valuable information that a museum, if they're digging this out of, Montana, then maybe Museum of the Rockies at Montana State, or, if they're digging this out of Wyoming, you've got the Tate Museum in Wyoming, thank you, and in Dakota, and now in South Dakota. What do we have in South Dakota? School of Mines.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are lots of institutions there, plus a lot of smaller museums in these areas that could house and store
and
these
display
specimens and display these specimens for public access, whether that is citizen scientists, or professional researchers. But if this stuff gets collected improperly and sold to the highest bidder for however much money,
could be sitting in a boardroom in Japan,
or a foyer of a real estate company, or on the mantle of Nicolas Cage. Or,
why is that a problem?
Well, do you know where Nicolas Cage lives?
I don't.
Do you think if we knocked on his door and asked us to study his dinosaur bits, that he would be likely to be receptive to that?
I don't know. I just don't know Nick that way.
Yeah. Do you think he has proper storage for his collection?
That's a good question. What happens if he decides he wants to get rid of it and sell it to somebody else? Is there any way of tracking that?
Not really, no. So if I were
If it
to
was Jack
get
Nicholson's place, I might be able to get us in there.
Yeah, well, but even so, if Nick would let me into his house to look at his dinosaurs or his fossils, and then I brought some really cool research to you as a peer to review,
I'd say I want to see that too.
and he may or may not allow a bunch of people in there. So again, repeatability, testability, all of that stuff is a huge deal in science research. So accessibility is a big thing. The other thing is, where do you think this whole idea of the $1 million dinosaur comes from? Any guesses?
I don't know about $1 million dinosaur, but I remember there was an $8 million
$8 million dinosaur, yeah.
Once upon a time, yeah.
Wow.
I think it's in the
little
Windy
thing.
City.
It's a little thing, right? Windy City, right? They have a museum of the field out there.
They do.
So
indeed.
the Chicago Field Museum has a T-Rex on display. They nickname it Sue. And Sue the T-Rex was excavated on private land, and then the landowner, after he realized that this might be worth money, decided he wanted it back. And then what was it, the Sioux Indian tribe?
People thought it was
decided-
on. They didn't know if it was on. The people that dug it up didn't know if it was. They weren't really sure.
It got
Whether
very
it was on
legally
Indian land.
snarled.
Yeah, it was very snarled.
And then the federal government stepped in and seized it. And the guy that dug it up ended up, I think, in jail for a couple of years for something. It wasn't related to Sue, but it was some other practice of his that got him in trouble that they got him on. But so Sue then sat in storage for a while, a number of years.
Books were written about it.
And then I think it was Sotheby's reached out to the landowner that I think was finally granted possession of
Ownership.
of the fossils. So Sotheby's said, hey, we can help you sell this if you want. And so they agreed to do that. And they were expecting it to sell for $1 million, which is why I said $1 million dinosaur. And what ended up happening is there were a few museums there, and there were a lot of private bidders there. And within, I think, no more than 10 minutes, it went up above $1 million, to $5 million, to $6 million, to $7 million. And the representative for the Field Museum got the highest bid, which came to a grand total of like $8.36 million. So, that included Sotheby's fee and the portion that went to the landowner that originally
Sure.
owned the land. But here's the deal. Generally, museums don't have that kind of money
The
to
Field
work with.
Museum did not have that kind of money.
No, it didn't. Who did?
I believe that was McDonald's.
Just McDonald's?
Could have been Pepsi, maybe Disney World.
Disney. It was Disney.
Disney,
McDonald's and Disney. We're not talking small corporations backing them. We're talking the corporations. Disney? I mean, come on. McDonald's? I was an exchange student in Russia in 1990. There was a McDonald's in Red Square. No joke. So we're talking a powerhouse.
And it was very fortunate that they were willing and able to put the money up to get it into a museum.
So
Now,
yeah.
if it happened to be that Disney just wanted it in Disney World as a display, that could have happened.
Could have gone that way. So the upshot is, yes, it ended up in a publicly accessible collection. It was well cared for. It was studied by many experts and made available to professional paleontologists and the general public alike. That's great. We absolutely love that. The problem is, the downside is that it sent a very, very, very loud message throughout the western United States where dinosaur fossils are found. Now, I don't know about your experiences when you've been out in the field, but I've actually found myself on the wrong end of a gun twice while doing field work. One time, active bullets going over our heads, which is quite a shock. And the second time, a very grumpy farmer with a shotgun came up to us and was kind of in our faces until we showed him our BLM permit. So things get wacky out there. And the message there is that if you find a dinosaur skeleton, it's as good as gold. And you've got a lot of people out there, just like you've got a lot of people wanting to win the lottery. And your chances are probably just about as good as striking the big jackpot. You might find some dinosaur material.
It's probably not.
There's plenty.
Lots of dinosaur
ends
material.
of bones and teeth, but that's not going to sell for millions of dollars.
No. Matter of fact, there's a number of really, really nice dinosaur bones that people have been trying to sell for years, and they're not unfortunately, or fortunately, and maybe fortunately, unfortunately, sometimes that market goes up with the
Well,
movie sales.
And and the one case that I can think of, there's been actually 2 dinosaur skeletons that are kind of locked in battle, and it's been for sale off and on for 20 years. So again, the scenario there is this belongs to somebody who's trying to sell it for, I can't remember what the price tag is, but it's more than most institutions and individuals, for that matter, can afford. So basically what's happening to these 2 specimens that may or may not be a way of learning about dinosaur behavior and interaction is just sitting somewhere, gathering dust. But what's 20 years to a dinosaur?
And the thing about it is, if people don't know what they're doing collecting fossils, they can be destroyed before anybody has a chance to know whether they're worthwhile or not. There could be huge pieces of our history destroyed because people don't know what they're doing when they're trying to collect them. And once they're collected, if they don't end up in a public institution, then there's a very good chance that nobody will even know they were collected. They could be sold. I might not even know about it. There's certainly a number of complete, very important paleontological specimens that reside in private hands, and nobody knows about them other than the people that buy and sell said fossils. And researchers never even know that they're there. And sometimes they pop up back up into the realm where professional paleontologists can see them, and we're like, holy crap, this is an important piece of our history that is telling a story that fits in some of the missing links and pieces, and we never knew about it because it ended up immediately in private hands. And so it's a kind of a scary thing, and it's not something that we as people who have as our mission to create an appreciation and understanding for our Earth history, to have things that are sort of taken away. And we don't want to glorify. We don't want to glorify the idea that this is currency as opposed to history.
Exactly, and that's where I was going to lead to is, the signal was sent loud and clear when, in what was it, the late 90s?
Yes.
And anybody who was hearing it on the news. It was a big deal, and it sent the message out loud and clear that resonated for several decades. Because I wasn't out in the field in northern Montana until after 2003. So there were still people out there looking for their golden dinosaur and willing to shoot people for it, which is scary.
And the other thing.
So my fear now is because Discovery Channel, and I know I said I wouldn't turn this into a bashing of Discovery Channel, but I will rebuke them. And say, it's disappointing that a television network that portrays itself to be about the teaching of science would
show blatant disregard for science.
For the very scientists that study this, and the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology, which is the professional. Sort of the premier professional paleontology association, has actually sent a letter of disappointment to the producers of the Discovery Channel that they would glorify such a thing. So, at the very least, I'm hoping that the Discovery Channel throws up a little thing at the beginning of every episode that says this does not reflect the values of Discovery Channel, or we don't necessarily endorse the sale of fossils. That would be the decent thing, at the very least, to do.
And the tough part is it also sends a message that, like Ian said, in these areas there is a lot of federal and state lands where it is, it's difficult to get a permit as a public institution or a research institution to get a permit to go dig up things professionally, to put in a federal repository like the Sternberg Museum. Because you have to go through the right appropriate number of hoops to show why it's important to dig this particular fossil up. what is it? What's the research value of it? People want to know that in order to dig it up. But when you send the message that it could be worth a lot of money, it leads to poachers not just being on private land, but going over and trying to find fossils on public land and basically stealing fossils off of public land. And there are always problems too with especially in these areas where there's ranchers who have huge ranches. Unless they're out there with guns all the time, it also lends people trying to poach stuff off of private land.
Well, and at the very worst, some of my maybe not so unreasonable fears at this point is that in this area of Kansas, the vast majority of fossil-bearing sediments and outcrops are on private land. So we, as a learning institution, as a place that offers specimens to study for research, depend greatly on the goodwill of these landowners, that they will donate these fossils to us. And I worry that if this message is sent in a glorified way, in a very well varnished package, with music and excitement, and these guys look like they're striking it rich, well, gosh, how many landowners out here are going to start looking at their finances and go, wow, what if I dig up a mosasaur and sell it wherever these singing cowboys are selling them? So there's that aspect. But the other aspect is these are not professional paleontologists. These are not researchers. They are not scientists. So if you should choose to watch it, which I would strongly encourage you to watch something else, like maybe Prehistoric Road Trip, which is airing on PBS. Very, very, very good show with actual experts in the field of natural history. And it's a lot of fun. So if you're looking for real science education programs, that's a strong recommendation right there. But if you decide to go ahead and watch that, that's fine. Just keep in mind that anything these guys say, any identification they make, any methods they use to dig these things up are not professional. They are not paleontologists. They are not doing paleontology. What they are doing is they are digging up fossils for the sole purpose of making money. And that is a problem.
So, if you really want to see cool fossils, come visit us here at the Sternberg Museum.
Absolutely. We'll show you fossils close up. And we're really exciting and awesome and shiny. All right. So I felt like that was something that we really needed to address early on, and we might revisit this. And, paleontological ethics is a big subject. It's sometimes a very slippery slope. So we may talk more about that in the future, but I don't want to, necessarily seek anybody out or bash a network or whatever. That's not the point of this. The point of this is to point out what is paleontology and what is not. So keep that in mind if you do decide to watch it. And if you really want to see cool stuff, come here. So as always, please like and share our live feeds. If you've got questions for us, do not hesitate to put them in the comments section. We like to read them. We'll get back to you as soon as we can, as quickly as possible. So, anything else?
I'm Reese.
I'm Ian. And this is...
The